Hello there, film friends, and welcome to the Irish Film London podcast, Season 2. I'm your host, Niamh Brannigan, and today we'll be starting off with a chat with myself and Gerry Maguire, no, not Tom Cruise. The head of Irish Film London, Gerry, and I will be catching you up with all the latest and greatest news in Irish film, TV and animation. And then I am joined with Stacey Gregg, who's the writer and director of her new feature film, Here Before. Here Before is about a bereaved mother Laura, played by Andrea Rosenborough, who sees a striking similarity to her late daughter Josie in the little girl Megan, who's just moved in next door. The sense conveyed is that emotional scars are still there, even if the wounds no longer bleed. And as parents, Brendan and Laura especially have been making an effort to be present for son Tig, so he doesn't feel stranded by the presence of grief in the house. Little things Megan says and does leads Laura to believe there's a connection between the kid next door and her late daughter. Could Josie's soul have transmigrated after death into Megan? The film explores the way profound grief can become a path leading to belief in reincarnation and maybe supernatural beliefs. These form the thematic tarmac for Here Before. Enjoy! Hello there, Gerry. How are you this week?
Hello, Niamh. Very well, thank you. It's a busy week because we're getting ready for our St. Patrick's Film Festival.
Yes.
But, there's a lot going on this week.
We briefly kind of touched on some of the events that are going to be coming up in our last podcast, but the weekend is upon us. So what exactly is the schedule? What can people look forward to this weekend?
So tonight opens the St. Patrick's Film Festival, which is a smaller event than the one in November, but still quite a significant one for us at Irish Film London. We're opening tonight with a film called Fosca, which we've talked about here on the pod before. It's pretty much sold out, by the way, which is really, really cool. It's at a venue called Catford Mews in Lewisham. I think that's Lewisham's only independent cinema. Beautiful little site that's taken over kind of a disused retail space, I think, by the looks of it. But really, really cool. So Sean, Brehna and I caught up earlier in the week. We pre-recorded a Q&A for that, and that's on at 8 o'clock tonight. Then we're back there on Sunday afternoon for a screening of The Secret of Kells. Handful of tickets left for that. There's a craft workshop afterwards with Manju from Capital Arts that's taking place in the cinema bar. So if anyone hasn't got a ticket for that yet, there's a handful of those left. Sunday, of course, is the big St. Patrick's Parade and Festival at Trafalgar Square. We'll be there as well from 12 till 6. We've got a stall. We have got some fun activities taking place at the stall.
You've got spoilers. Some special guests as well, don't you?
Oh, yeah. No spoilers. But we do have special guests coming in the form of... Shall I say who it is?
No, keep them guessing.
No,
but they're big. They're big names. They are huge names.
Huge names, yeah. All will be revealed on the IFL socials come Sunday.
Yeah.
And then Monday evening, where we carry on, we're at the Riverside Studios in Hammersmith, where we were last in November, for a preview screening of new film Wolf by Natalie Biancheri. Natalie, the director, and the two stars of the film, George Mackay and Eileen Walsh, will be with us to talk about that on stage. It's looking like it's going to be a really good show. Good few tickets left for that. It's a really big capacity cinema out there. It's nearly 200 seats, and there's a good few dozen tickets left at the time of recording, so jump on that before they go. And then Tuesday, a couple of days after, see the other things happening at the weekend. There's a couple of award ceremonies that are happening, but Tuesday evening there's a double BAFTA nominated film that we're screening called Ali and Eva, and that's at the Genesis Cinema in East London. That's on at I think 6:15 p.m. and Irish producer Tracy O'Riordan will be joining me to talk on stage about that. So tickets left for that one as well, and get on those while you can.
Amazing, jam-packed.
It's a big programme. Yeah, it's nice. You know what? Everything's in person again. We're just happy to be back.
Why not?
Yeah.
And hopefully Trafalgar Square won't be a washout like other years, praying that it's dry. Just even dry. We'll take dry.
I think it'll be a bit miserly, but I don't think it'll be a total washout this year.
Yeah, so, fingers crossed. But you briefly mentioned Fosca there. Speaking of Irish films, we had the results of the Audience Award from the Dublin Film Festival came in, and Colleen Keown won, which is so fab. I just think it's brilliant. Irish language films are just taking over.
They're taking over. I mean, like, anyone who has seen or heard of Colin Kuhn knows how strong and powerful a film it is, so it's not a massive surprise to know that it got that award. But yeah, how great is it to know that film like that Scanning as Gaeilge is so strong at the minute, you know?
Yeah, definitely. I'm gonna start my Irish lessons now, I think. Get back into it.
Yeah. So apart from Colin Kuhn, obviously there's Fosca, and that's like that was the first event to sell out for us this festival. So wow. That's another really strong one. I believe if you're in the UK over the weekend, the BBC premiere of Irish language film Dunyan is out, and that's then on iPlayer for anyone who doesn't catch it on its transmission time. So another one is out there.
I think that's also playing in, I could be wrong, but I think it's playing in the IFI in Dublin as well, also, which would be a nice little experience to see it on the big screen.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, and Fosca, of course, if you're in Ireland, has its general release in Ireland this weekend as well, which is why Sean's not able to join us in person. But we have the UK premiere of it here in London. So yeah, there's loads of it around.
It's so exciting, and this weekend correct me if I'm wrong, is the IFTAs as well. So we'll have loads to chat about on our next podcast as well.
That's one of those award ceremonies I was talking about. Yeah, so the IFTA's on Saturday, and obviously IFTA nominations, which we covered before, full of Irish Film London alumni. There's lots of people here who we've spoken to before, and lots of people who you can expect us to speak to in the future. But the other award ceremony, like it's a jam-packed weekend, on Sunday night, is the BAFTAs. So the IFTAs on Saturday, BAFTAs on Sunday, and we'll see what comes out of that.
We might just end up just doing a podcast, just me and you, in the next one. There'll be so much to chat about.
That's it. We don't have time to get a guest in.
But I have to say, I really, really enjoyed the interview with our guest this week, Stacey Gregg, chatting about her debut feature film, so impressive, Here Before. So I hope everyone enjoys it, and I will chat to you soon, Gerry.
Chat to you later, Niamh.
Bye. If you're part of the regular Irish Film London audience or want to get more from your experience, consider joining our growing family of members for a range of exciting benefits. Irish Film London is a non-for-profit organisation. Our mission is to promote the best new Irish film to audiences all over the UK, and with the help of this podcast, the world. If you become a festival friend or a festival champion, you get perks like discounted tickets for films and events, free access to Irish Film from Home films, and invites to networking events, and so much more. So check it out now. Hello and welcome. I'm here with Stacey Gregg, the writer and director of Here Before. Stacey, welcome to the Irish Film London podcast. Thanks for coming on to chat to me today.
Thank you very much for having me. Excited to be here.
No worries at all. So I've already given a little bit of a brief about the film for any listeners who haven't seen it yet. And I say yet because if you haven't, you need to go and watch it. So which means we can just kind of dive straight in, which is great. So this is your debut feature film. What an impressive and accomplished feature it is. But it's most definitely not your first piece of writing, as you've been writing for theatre and TV for a while now. So what did the jump look like from those mediums into feature film writing? Was it kind of quite a natural shift, or was it quite stark, or...?
It was both in various ways. So it was very stark in the sense that I had only directed a short film before I jumped into the feature, which was utterly terrifying, not to beat around the bush. But what I realized with hindsight, certainly, and I had an inkling at the time, is that actually I had a lot of transferable skills and, you know, areas that I felt very confident working in. And to sort of just embrace that and to be sort of very open about the blank spots and the learning curve. But I think that some of the things that I love about live art and theatre practice are not the most obvious things crossing over. One of the things that I love to work with stage work is our images and the visuals the thing that I love about performance often is less traditional and much more to do with a sense of liveness and presence. And so those were things that I was also probably very much alert to and looking for in the shift to film. But again, the differences being very, very stark as well. So the pressure that you're under, the time constraints. Yes, you often only have 3 weeks to rehearse for a theatre show, but when you're on a shoot, there's really no luxury of time. And just how much more complicated the machinery of filmmaking. So sort of getting a handle on that as I was sort of in the driver's seat was, quite an experience, but, an incredible one.
Well, it's funny that you say it, because it really does feel like there's no blueprint, on like not everyone makes a film or goes about making a film the same way. So the fact that you already had so many skills from theatre and TV writing, and even from making a short, to bring to this table, definitely I imagine would have given you some confidence. But like that, you can really only learn so much until you're just thrown into it. And as I said, it's super accomplished and really, really impressive. So what was your inspiration for this particular story here before?
So the premise of the whole film, this idea that a little girl moves somewhere that she's never been before and couldn't possibly know, and starts making observations and saying things like, very explicitly driving past the graveyard and going, oh, that's where they put me in the ground, or something along those lines. That as a sort of seed had been bouncing around my brain for years and years. And I think one of the things that pushed me into this is that I knew it wasn't a theatre show. Like, I knew it was a film. And so that was the first, having never written for screen before. This is even before I started staff writing in TV. That was the story that I sat down and wrote as a screenplay, and that became a kind of spec script for me for quite a while as a writer. And then as I sort of established myself in the industry as a screenwriter, and took on more of a role directing in my theatre work, those things maybe converged also with this desire that I had long held to direct for film. And that was around the time then that I made the short. And again, I didn't make the short with an eye to directing here before as my first full-length feature. I hadn't quite connected the two, because I think, truthfully, I didn't want to overburden myself with the short. I just wanted to experience the short and feel quite free doing it. But if I look back now, actually, there are a lot of things that I was clearly exploring and experimenting with that do, I think, translate through to what you see in the feature.
Absolutely. And I really am dying to chat about Andrea Riseborough, because I just like what a performer. So she plays Laura, and she's just such a stunning fit for the role. So how did you find the casting process? And then as well, especially with the children, with Megan and Tyke, who just did stellar jobs. What was that process like?
I loved it. I mean, casting for me is just like magic. It's one of my favorite processes in whatever form I'm working. And I was always really excited about finding those kids. The first big part of the jigsaw, once you're getting your finance together, is Laura, because she is she's the main, she's our purse, she's our navigator. And when what happened was I put a sizzle reel together. For anyone who doesn't know what that is, it's like a little taster, like a little visual taster of what your film might feel like, and it's usually just to help financiers envision get on the vision with you, get on board. And Andrea popped up quite a lot in it. My producers and I were sort of like, God, who would we cast? Someone like Andrea, wouldn't it be amazing? Someone like her. And eventually we all were just kind of like, shall we ask? Because it did feel like, of course I really admire her. I followed her career. She's incredible, and she's incredibly in demand. She's chocker. She's always back to back with work. But anyway, we sent the materials off, and I wrote an email to her, just sort of saying, why I would love to work with her and why I thought the project might interest her. And I just think it's really important for people to hear how banal the process actually was. And the fact was, she received it, she read it, she liked it, we met up, and, she came on board, which is incredible, and she's, I really admire her taste. She's quite eclectic. She's popped up, I think, in a lot more stuff than people realize over the years, because she's quite a chameleon. So I think people now, she's kind of reached this critical mass where people are like, wow, you know, she's done so much and she's brilliant. And it's like, yes, she's been doing this for quite a while, you know. But you know, getting to work with her on your first feature is obviously incredible. And you know, I loved every day, and what she provided us with then to go into the edit with, and all these tiny choices that she's constantly making. Everything comes from a really rooted place of authenticity, a very thoughtful place. And then finding that dynamic between her and the family units. So it's quite a chamber ensemble piece. You know, it's quite claustrophobic in its own way, these two families. And so just finding the kids that would work with that. And again, I didn't want to go with like sort of, I don't mean to dismiss it, but more sort of state practice kids or stage kids. So finding these guys, neither of them had a lot of experience, I think any screen experience actually before this. But they just brought something that I really believed, and I really believed looking at, you know, Niamh in front of the camera has this incredible stillness that I've talked about that was quite unusual among her peers, and also really able for improvising because she's a cheeky wee soul, you know. And similarly Lewis, you know, he just somehow sat in this he just really emoted this place between being a boy and a man. And his sort of, when we put the two of them together as a chemistry read, you know, it's just magic, and you go, there they are, you know. So
I really loved as well that Tig was really a part of it. He wasn't just like the other child, you know what I mean? And he was really a part of it as well, in the sense of, you know, the way sometimes when you watch films that might have a similar kind of theme of that kind of maybe psychotic thriller, or, you know, that suspense, it's kind of usually always the woman that everyone thinks is mad, and it's like, you know, no, it's just a creak in the pipes, you know. Whereas it was really nice that Tig was really involved in that as well, and that protective element over his family and his late sister as well really came through in a really lovely understated way. And that's a tough role for a young man to play, and he just did such a great job.
And same with Marty McCann's role, like, you know, it was quite background, but actually, like, it always strikes me that I want to feel compassion for everyone. And I think that Tig as a character is I always called him the truth teller, the seer. You know, he sees everything, he's saying it like it is. He's about the only person doing that, but no one's listening. And it's quite heartbreaking. But yeah, the way he approached that, and I think he learned a lot, again, just on his feet, you know, on the shoot, which was really glorious actually to watch.
And that's so amazing about Andrea. Like, I think it was the same I did a podcast with Swan Song, and Benjamin was talking about, you know, just sending the script, you know, to Mahershala, kind of going as if, you know, but like the answer is always no if you don't ask, you know. But I think artists like that, they recognize good work when they see it and a good script, and they go, no, that's what I want to be a part of. Do you know what I mean? And that's got to be so satisfying and confidence boosting as well in itself. But so you had shot the film, and then we went into lockdown. So I think a lot of the kind of first of all, talk about serious post-project blues, that it's like the ultimate kind of come down, I'd say. But what was it like kind of finishing the film during that time? Was there a lot of Zooms and texts and emails as opposed to just being in the room, or what was that like?
It was I'm always very careful to qualify when I say it was really tough, because like clearly there were a lot of people who had a much tougher time, and at least, you know, I was able to finish the film. So relatively speaking, it was just, it was felt like a massive bummer. You know, we shot, it was really exciting, and then we just got into the edit when lockdown happened. And I'm a very collaborative person. I really bounce off people's energy in the room. We never really got to do a proper test audience. I had to picture lock without seeing it on the big screen, you know, all of which is really tough, let alone for your first feature. But, you know, balanced with that with the fact that we did get to finish it, that we worked out a workflow. I had great, you know, people I was working with in post. we got our pickups guerrilla style, completely on the fly. You know, and you know, I'm very proud of the final product, and you do kind of go, right, well, if I was able to finish it under those circumstances, you know, like everything now moving forward feels, you know, really sort of luxurious. Like, what, we're all living together, great.
So you kind of briefly mentioned earlier about Andrea with you know, her kind of thoughts and views on the character in the film and stuff. Was it quite a collaborative process in regards to the actors? Was there like improv or input from them, or as you were saying there, with chemistry tests and stuff like that?
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't sort of like, you know, a free for all, wasn't. But yeah, I would say that my way of working is, like I say, what's really paramount to me always is that I believe them. I need to see a performance that I believe, and in order to get that, a lot of the time you have to create the space, even when you're like against it with time, you know, and whatever other logistics you know are sort of screaming around you. Your job is to create the space and provide whatever emotional information is needed for the performer to find their way there. So one way of doing that, especially with the younger performers, was I would usually run the scene a few times by the book, sort of what we had on script, and then start to like let it breathe a little bit. And that way we caught lots of gorgeous stuff, a lot of completely improvised stuff that made its way into the film and gives it that real nice texture. And you know, I think that the team, Chloe Thompson, my DP as well, was very sort of, you know, alert and open to finding things as we went along, and it just meant that you're sort of making the most of the time that you've got.
Absolutely. I think the tension and the pacing is so perfect. Nothing feels like too pushed, even like really kind of subtle things like the class difference between the two families, and even kind of the spiritual element of it. It just feels really perfectly layered, which means that we can sit back and just enjoy the performances. And I really found the score complemented the pacing and the tension perfectly, especially with the song, the Free Design, the Love You song. So what was the kind of scoring process of the film like?
So Adam Janota Bazowski also scored Saint Maud, and I was looking for our composer around, and I saw Saint Maud, and what I could hear, not only did I really love the film, but what I could hear in the composition were influences that I was also, you know, mixing around and listening to and being influenced by, and I got quite excited by that. So I contacted Adam, we started talking, and obviously Here Before is a very different film, and it creates a very different atmosphere. But you know, Adam is just so idiosyncratic and creative and responsive. So the first thing he did was create like a smorgasbord of sounds, and that started a conversation between us. And sometimes he would write tracks for certain parts of the film, but he wouldn't necessarily score the picture, so I would mix that around. Because, you know, it's always a surprise, you know, what can come from that. And, you know, I think in the same way, the Free Design was a track that I didn't head into the film with when we shot that sequence, but I knew roughly what it wanted to feel like. And then one day I heard the track and I was like, that's it. And that sequence came together really quickly in the edit and basically stayed that way right through. There's something that happens that's quite instinctive, I think. So yeah, I mean, Adam, I think the score, that was one of the things that was hard during lockdown, is I knew that people were first experiencing the film often through like poor sound system, laptops, even phones, you know, and you're like, you know, of course you can't stop that. It's great that the film is being shared, but to finally get the full fat experience of having a theatrical release and knowing that people could hear that beautiful score and sound design as well, which felt so much like a part of the character of the film. And all that gorgeous work, you know, that Adam's done.
Absolutely, it felt really, really present as a thing of the film. I noticed some superstitions kind of slotted in there as well, which I really appreciate. Big superstitious gal over here. But so we had, I think it was the white feather, and then also the bird in the house as well. So are these?
You're the first person that's mentioned that.
No, really?
Yeah.
I don't think I can go past a magpie at this stage.
Yeah.
So were those little notes that you really kind of wanted in there and wanted to hit?
Yeah, totally. You know, I grew up in that world as well. Like, you know, my mum would still be very live in those both worlds, you know, so to speak. And I, you know, I love it, and I find it really valuable. And I, you know, I've talked about it a fair bit, but although I don't like to sort of front load and say, you know, oh, it's a film about grief per se, it clearly, you know, it wants to explore how we each navigate that. And something that was always important to me is that those things aren't mutually exclusive. You know, so it's, you know, Laura certainly at the end of the film feels her daughter as close as she ever did. And I think that's sort of, sometimes people don't pick up on that. And I think those things are really important to the sort of the texture of the film. So those little, I mean, it was so funny because those are the things that very easily get noted out early on by producers, well-meaning producers, like, but why is there the scene with the bird? And it's not, you can't really just be like, it's poetry. Yeah. But no, those things were all sort of carefully layered in around Laura and also around Brendan's mum, who, you know, very much is a sort of gateway to that. You know, they have that sort of slightly off-camera chat in the graveyard, you know, about spirituality. It's kind of always there on the periphery of the film.
I think it's really important that you said that as well, especially with Laura feeling close to her daughter, because it really is, she doesn't go looking for any of this, Laura. Do you know what I mean? Like the superstitions, it just kind of all seems to happen around her. You know, it's not that she's actually, you know, making it up or searching for it or creating it. It actually just kind of happens around her, which I think is also quite important for the film.
It's crucial in a way because we should never really feel, and I'm very pleased to note that it has rarely been received in the way that this is a film about a crazy woman having a, you know, mental health breakdown. You know, it's we're in the world with her, and other people are seeing and hearing what she is, and I think that makes it all the more chilling, actually, you know, before various things come to light. So yeah, that was always quite important. And, you know, it's certainly at the top of the film as well, when we meet Laura, she's doing it, you know, she's getting on, she's survived, you know, she's moving forward with her family, she's together, you know, and I think those things are really important.
Definitely, it's a really, really fresh element of the film as well. And you kind of playfully strum horror notes throughout to kind of amp up the ambiguity and to kind of keep us guessing and focused as well, which I think is a tough thing to do nowadays. And sometimes people say, you know, you write one film, you shoot a second, and you edit a third. Okay. Did you find that the film changed a lot throughout the processes, or did it stay quite close to the original?
The essence of it absolutely stayed very close to the original. I completely subscribe to the whole you make a film 3 times, probably because I come from being a screenwriter, but also I have a real interest in editing. And I think not being afraid of that and really recognizing, like, a good editor is a magician, you know, and they can show you things you've never seen. And the film, there's a lot more, obviously, you know, we shot a lot more stuff, but there's stuff that doesn't make it into the film because you need to calibrate the focus of the film, or certainly as time went on, it really became such a dance of like just an extra beat on a look here, or like a one word of dialogue there could entirely shift how people were receiving the film. So you know, there's a lot of the really exciting thing, and this happens as a writer as well, but I think now, having been through the process, it's just part of the whole process, is a lot of stuff can be scaffolding, and that goes in really early on for loads of reasons, because producers are reading it, financiers are reading it, you know, it needs to be spelt out in a way. And I'm always interested in how much you can actually strip away and what still stands and what is still communicated. And I think that restraint and minimalism and economy were qualities that I went into the film with anyway. But it, like I say, it's always quite amazing actually how much you can do with very little.
And how did you find the difference between, like, that getting kind of financiers and backing compared to like commissions, because you've been commissioned by the Royal Court and the Abbey and Clean Break, and so what was that kind of like as kind of financial people around you in different mediums?
It's, gosh, that's a really I say gosh now because I'm a parent. I always gosh.
PG
Yeah,
audience.
I have to be careful now because they hit repeat everything. That's a really interesting question. I guess because the stakes are so high in film and you're talking such large sums relatively, you really, I thought in theatre you had to sort of, sing for your money sort of thing, but I think in film it goes through so many exacting eyes, so many rounds of notes, you're interrogated so much that it, on reflection, it starts to make some of those commissions in theatre feel like, freedom. Which again, it just depends on your journey through. But I think, I think they get a lot more say in TV and film, and learning. I think, yes, my experience from theatre has taught me how to take a good note, and as a screenwriter, it's always that thing of what's under the note. So I think it's never useful to ignore notes. I think it's very easy for people to buy into the notion that you're a maverick filmmaker and no one understands your vision. But I think certainly experiences taught me that, like, you might not like to listen to it, you might not always take it on board, but there's always value in trying to process where responses to a film or a script or whatever is coming from. And there was a lot of that to navigate in the film world, I think, compared to theatre.
Yeah, and I'd say, I can only imagine that there's definitely a fine balance to find between like that taking notes and taking on kind of external pressures like that, and then also still listening to your gut, and remembering why you're actually doing it and what you want to say and all that, because I'd say outside noise can get very loud.
Oh yeah, everybody's everyone's a everyone's a director. So I think filtering that and learn how to process is a massive part of the gig.
And you wrote it, you directed it, and you said you love being involved in the edit, but you also do a dab hand at acting as well. Was there ever a point throughout here before that you thought you might make a little cameo or
pick myself in there?
As a school teacher or anything?
To be honest, I was probably just too busy and bricking it every day to risk that. Maybe down the line, I don't know. But I think to be honest, I think I use a different part of my brain or a different muscle when I'm directing, and I wouldn't want to risk confusing that or muddying it. Having said that, during prep for the film, I did disappear for a couple of days to do a one woman show in the Fringe.
I love it. She does it all.
We're like, what?
What does he do?
It's like, guys, I can't let them down. I have to, looking back, obviously it was complete madness, but I just think, you feel, again, you talked about being an artist earlier, and I really try and champion that term, because I think it's easy to silo yourself into one role. And I think if you're creative and you need to nourish yourself within reason, it's, for me, keeping all of those sort of cooking is important.
I also think I'm an actor as well, and I think that you always get so much joy and kind of relief when you're being directed by someone who has also acted, because and I always really, really admire anyone who can direct and act in something, especially if they're like a lead or if it's a solo piece, because they really are kind of two different brains. But like that, like if the director has been an actor or is an actor, there's just that different layer of understanding, which is just speaks volumes, I think. And sometimes that really, really comes through as well. And I think that definitely did here. But seeing as it was your first feature, are there any kind of major lessons that you've learned on this particular project that you're going to take into others in the future?
Make sure that you have really good snacks. Because on like day 2 or 3, I got like really dizzy because I'd just completely forgotten to, look after myself. And it is so intensive, and, really it's boring, but it's so crucial.
It's key.
It's key. Keep your feet warm. We were shooting in December. Oh my God. Like it was so cold. And eventually I got like really thermal socks and like really practical stuff for shoots. I think I've mentioned this a few times, just reflecting on the whole experience, but one of the things that I learned about myself that I feel is like hugely key to surviving in the industry generally is the ability to just like roll with it. So I think I kind of realized that I have the capacity to absorb quite a lot of stress, and stress manifests itself in people in really curious ways. So, it's that thing about turning up every day. People are putting in really long hours. The film and TV industry as yet is still running in a crazy way, with like really crazy long days, maybe 11-day fortnight turnarounds. Like, people are caning it, and to get the best work out of people, they need to feel looked after and appreciated and confident and heard. And I think for whatever reason, again, maybe my background, maybe working my way up, from staff writing right at the bottom in writers' rooms that were basically like blood on the walls, bloodbaths. I went into it sort of very conscious of that. And so, yeah, I don't know, just being aware of that at all times. I would say that to anybody. Sort of
happy crew. And the location, so it was shot near where you grew up.
Oh yeah, like totally. It was very, very much like the landscape that I grew up in. So it's so local that if you look out my window now and just up the road, we shot some of the B&B stuff up there, which again was just like lovely to sort of celebrate places that I haven't seen on screen that you've gone, like, why not? It looks amazing.
Exactly. I think the houses joining, there's a few external shots of the house. I love the one of the lights going off. I love that shot. But I just think the two houses joined together, that shot it's just a shot of two houses, but it's so powerful because they're so intertwined, these two families, but they're really not. And I think also so where it's obviously set in Northern Ireland, I don't know if this was even conscious, but because of the whole kind of neighborly, they're friendly, but it's kind of that very kind of externally, small talk, hi, how are you, kind of friendly. There's definitely still a wariness there. Was that kind of, because there's been so much segregation throughout the north, and like people kind of not knowing who everyone is, especially if there's a new family in town or anything like that, was that kind of an element at all, or was that just kind of a natural thing that just came out?
I think that it's in there, and there's no point of ignoring it or trying to avoid it, but it's part of the texture and the specificity of the setting of the film. So I think that the way that I hope to work, and the way I think the film has gone out into the world, is that there's clearly a universal element that will hit people in a certain place and is, very accessible. And then there's the sort of cultural specificity. Even you talking about the bird in the house is, not something that everybody will get. And in the same way, that wariness, that sort of unease between the two families, and the recent history of this part of the world, I knew all of that would be in there and at play, and that you don't really need to name it, but it can still do its work. So that was kind of how I felt about that. And I think, increasingly I've wanted to tell stories that, and I think this is true of my theatre work as well, even when I lean into the tensions that are quite particularly Northern Irish, or that it's not as simplistic as a binary, as like green and orange or whatever. I think, class, generally speaking, is the fault line across which a lot of that stuff plays out anyway.
Yeah.
So agreed, it's both universal and specific.
Yeah, I think it's also really nice to see a Northern Irish film that's not about that as well. It's really, really lovely. So what is something that you would like viewers to take away from the film?
Oh, see, now with this question, I always it feels like I'm being tricksy, but I am a great believer in not prescribing what people should, feel or take away, or, I think if they come to it and experience something, and if that is in counterpoint to the person who sat next to them, all the better. I bumped into my aunt on Monday, and she had gone to see it without telling me, and she was furious because she had all these questions. Started picking my brain about it. I was like, yeah, great. But I just think, I don't know, it's a first feature. I'm really proud of it. I think that the collaboration with, costume design, production design, composition, everything that you've flagged up, it takes a massive team to create these things. And I just have enjoyed how much people seem to have responded to that. So yeah.
It's definitely one I think that you could just go and see and then go for a pint after and talk about all the different subtleties that loads of different people are going to pick up on.
I'm just gonna say, like, there's little things that people haven't even really picked up on. When Laura's in the bathroom, she leans down at one point and there's the reflection of a little girl's head in the mirror, and then when she stands up, it's gone. I know it's there.
I'm raging I didn't pick up on that.
Or when she's running the bath, the water is running backwards. There's like little bit, yeah. So,
oh my God, I'm just gonna have to watch it again.
I really it's really interesting what people pick up on, and I love that you mentioned about the lights going out. That was one of my favorite little moments as well. It's the devil's
I want to ask actually about the just when you brought me back there to the bathroom, was when she's in the bathroom, all the tops are off, all the bottles. Was that because in my head then I thought was Megan in the house, and then is that what it was? I think.
Well, we know she's been in house because she's all over Laura's phone, and also we literally saw her sniffing around that bathroom on the night when they were out the back garden. Do you know what I mean? So that Megan,
oh, so great. She's fantastic. But so where can people catch her before, if they haven't seen it?
So now I wish I was more across the details, but it is due to be streaming in a couple of weeks' time. So March it should be available.
And when we know all of the streaming platforms, we will put them up to make sure everyone can see it. Okay. So what is next for Stacey Gregg at the moment? What's going on now?
Well,
not that this isn't enough.
busy. I directed a block of a new show for HBO and Sky called The Baby, and that is going out imminently. It's going out in the States, I think, next month, and then it'll be available over here. So that's pretty exciting, and my first foray into TV directing, which is a whole other thing.
That's a different podcast. We'll have you back on.
That's another one. And then I'll be working on my next feature. So
so exciting, amazing. So I do ask everyone at the end of the podcast, you can answer both, or just one is also fine, because I know they can be ridiculous questions. But if there was ever a film, I don't like to say favorite film, but if there was ever a film that has really made an impact on your life, and or your favorite Irish film.
So the film, this sounds a little cheaty, but because it's actually an animation, but Watership Down like traumatized me. Had a huge impact. I watched that over and over and over. And I just think, like, in terms of things, early memories of drama and quite dark stuff, I think Watership Down was a big one. And like the way Bright Eyes, that music plays in the middle of that as well. Yeah, love it. Irish film, when I first watched What Richard Did a few years ago, it really got under my skin. And I loved Lenny's work anyway, but there was just something, and I think maybe you can feel it. There's something about, again, the restraint and the stillness, and the poetry of that piece and the troubling quality to it that I really admired and definitely came back to a number of times over the years. And I think, all of Lenny's work is so sort of thoughtful and careful. And I'm a great admirer of that. So What Richard Did it's
definitely a film that stays with you, I think, for sure. It's fantastic.
Yeah.
Well, Stacey, thank you so much for coming on to chat to me today. I really appreciate it.
Pleasure.
And here at Irish Film London, we wish you all the best with all of your future successes, and hopefully we'll be having you back on very soon to talk about them. And we will see you very soon.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Chat to you soon. Bye.
And that's it for this week's interview. Thank you all so much for listening. We hope you really enjoyed it. Thank you to Culture Ireland and the Irish Emigrant Support Programme. Myself and Gerry will be back in a fortnight with a brand new interview. See you then.